Katherine Whitmore never even saw the face of the low-ranking worker who saved her entire corporate empire from absolute ruin, while her $40 billion artificial intelligence routing network burned to the ground. Servers went completely dead nationwide, and the elite board was already drafting her immediate termination papers. Then an anonymous email arrived. It arrived at 2:13 a.m., holding the code her highly credentialed engineers simply couldn't write, along with a digital trail pointing straight to a high-ranking traitor inside her own building. By sunrise, the giant corporation was breathing again. But the mysterious sender had completely vanished. 3 months later, Katherine launched a nationwide hunt for this unrecognized genius. She never realized the brilliant mind she chased was the quiet janitor mopping the floors outside her office every night. If you and I believe true genius has nothing to do with job titles, stay until the very end. Aetherion Dynamics was not a name the average person on the street recognized. Yet it quietly moved almost everything they bought, ate, or completely relied upon. Headquartered in Chicago, they operated the absolute most advanced artificial intelligence-driven supply chain network in America. Their system managed over 4 million cargo shipments every single month across 47 states, guiding massive truck fleets with a terrifying precision no human dispatcher could ever match. Aetherion had been valued at roughly $40 billion last year, and its custom artificial intelligence platform was universally considered the most securely coded shipping infrastructure in the entire private sector. At least, that was the grand illusion until the night of October 3rd. CEO Katherine Whitmore sat frozen behind the curved glass of her 32nd floor command center. Her eyes locked onto a massive wall of flashing red warnings. At 27, she was the youngest CEO in Aetherion's 15-year corporate history. And for 6 brutal months, she had been fighting a war on 2 different fronts. One against a heavily slowing freight market, dragging their stock price down every quarter, and one against the very quiet, toxic smear campaign led by Connor Reeves, their highly entitled chief operating officer. Connor was 12 years older than Katherine, smooth and arrogant, like men who believed their high status exempts them from proving anything. He made it wildly obvious he judged her position as far beyond her actual capability. He never insulted her directly to her face. He absolutely did not have to. Every passive-aggressive memo, every conveniently delayed quarterly financial report, every single smirk during a big board presentation said it all. But you and I know petty corporate rank vanishes when the whole system starts to scream. At 11:47 p.m., a critical breach alert fired from the main routing engine. By midnight, 3 massive secondary servers went completely dark. By 12:30, the absolute core of the network was breached, and Aetherion's heavy cargo trucks nationwide suddenly stopped getting their navigation data, leaving 60,000 massive vehicles either idling on dark highways or stranded at rest stops blind. Their credentialed engineers scrambled instantly. Senior software architects dialed in frantically from home on video screens, their voices sounding tight and panicked over the command center speakers. Katherine stood helpless, listening to her top-ranked engineer admit he had never witnessed an attack this beautifully precise, surgical, and painfully deliberate. This definitely was not ransomware. Look closer, this was no ordinary low-level overseas hack. The culprit knew Aetherion's entire system architecture inside out. An insider slipped right past security, moving like they held the keys to every single hidden door. And with every passing hour, the network remained pitch black. The tech giant bled roughly $1.2 million in brutal penalties and broken contracts. By 2 a.m, Katherine had 14 frantic messages from her furious board. 2 of those notes carried heavily veiled corporate threats, strong hints that she should step down and let Connor take control. But Katherine flat out refused to give in. Standing by her desk in her jacket, she ignored her cold coffee, staring at the cascading red server alerts until her eyes throbbed. Then at exactly 2:13 a.m., her computer chimed with a single new message. No sender name, no return address, just a completely blank subject line. Inside was a single sentence: check node 47 before sunrise. Attached were 47 lines of the cleanest, most elegant patch code she had ever seen. She sent it straight to her lead engineer. For 11 minutes, his screen stayed totally silent. Finally, his reply came through in 4 words. This will work. Deploying. By 4:30 a.m., servers were up. By 6, logistics trucks were rolling again. As sunrise hit Lake Michigan, Aetherian Dynamics was breathing again. Yet absolutely nobody knew whose dismissed invisible hand had just rescued them. While the executive command center on the 32nd floor panicked in their expensive suits. The quiet 11th floor corridor stayed completely, utterly silent. Let us look back at 11:50 that night. A tall man in a plain gray maintenance uniform pushed his mop cart past the secure server wing. His cheap, worn sneakers squeaked softly against the polished concrete floor. Hunter Blake was only 29 years old. And to every busy executive rushing past that night, like the frantic IT manager who brushed past him with a laptop tucked under his arm, or the stressed-out security supervisor who rudely waved him aside to clear a path for expensive gear, Hunter was completely invisible, dismissed solely because of the uniform he wore. Not disliked, not rude, just entirely unseen by the corporate elite. They treated him like background scenery, no different than a blank ceiling tile or a fire exit sign. At one point, a young engineer, a pompous kid named Derek, stopped in the corridor just long enough to bark. "Can you mop faster through here? We need this area clear." Hunter simply nodded, quietly pulling his cart back without saying a word. Another corporate climber, a woman in a sharp blazer rushing to the elevator, barked over her shoulder, "Do not stand near the main command center. Lowly maintenance staff is not supposed to be up here after hours." Hunter stepped back, waited patiently, then quietly resumed his route once she finally disappeared. He had tolerated that condescending attitude his entire career at Aetherian. He learned early on that being invisible was his best strategy in a corporate tower where people only judge you by your job title. But Hunter kept his eyes open. He had always watched closely. As he quietly mopped his way down the 11th floor hallway, he passed 4 wall-mounted status panels, each one flashing bright red alerts. These alerts meant absolutely nothing to the panicked executives rushing past to their emergency meetings. But to this ignored janitor, a hidden genius, they were clear sentences in a digital language he had mastered a decade ago. He saw exactly what was tearing their core network apart in real time. He read the failing system like a master musician reading a symphony. You and I know the truth. Within 5 minutes, this dismissed janitor understood the cyber attack better than any high-paid executive ever could. He didn't say a word, just kept on mopping. His cleaning shift finally ended. At 4:15 a.m., Hunter Blake quietly slipped out the service doors into the biting Chicago cold. He walked 2 blocks to the dark parking garage where his 12-year-old sedan sat under a blinking fluorescent light, then drove back to a tiny northwest side apartment. He found the front door unlocked. Little Hannah slept on the couch, wrapped in a faded quilt that once belonged to her late mother. An open picture book lay face down on the cushions right beside her. 7 years old, she had his dark hair and a quiet patience most kids her age lack. She woke up the second she heard his key turn. "Did you fix something again tonight?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. Hunter hung up his worn jacket, walked over to the sofa, and gently scooped her up. "Just cleaned up a mess," he said as she rested her head against his shoulder. "You always say that," she softly whispered. He tucked her in, turned off the lamp, and sat quietly in the dark hallway. Outside, the cold Chicago morning sky was just beginning to turn pale. Across town, inside a towering glass high-rise overlooking the lake, a massive tech empire he built from nothing was finally breathing again. You and I know the truth, but by morning, the Aetherian recovery story hit every financial newswire. It dominated every single tech blog and business newsletter in the country. One business reporter called it a miracle recovery, and that label stuck instantly. Aetherian stock, which had been crashing for 6 straight quarters, opened up 9%. The corporate board, who were texting their CEO angry threats at 2 in the morning, were now calling her office just to offer hollow congratulations. VP Connor Reeves showed up at 9 a.m. with an empty smile, praising how beautifully she managed the sudden crisis. Katherine thanked him, then waited until he finally left before letting out a heavy sigh of pure frustration. Because Katherine knew a secret that the rest of the world completely missed. She did not save this company. She never wrote that genius patch. She just forwarded an email she could not understand, sent by a stranger. The company survived because of a hidden genius, not her own corporate title. All the praise she received felt entirely fake and unearned. It was borrowed glory with a price tag she did not want to pay. Even worse, whoever wrote that rescue code knew the system architecture so deeply that an outsider could never have done it. This meant the savior was actually someone on the inside. Plus, the mysterious message contained something else. Look closer, hidden inside the file disguised as boring tech documentation was a partial server log tracking internal access from 3 days before the attack. It was not absolute proof, but it pointed straight to an inside threat. Katherine started her private investigation very quietly, handling it just like she ran the firm, methodical and completely off the grid. She grabbed the logs and ordered her security team to trace that originating IP address. 2 days later, he returned to tell his boss that the message bounced through 11 proxies across 6 countries. You and I know it was a dead end. She scoured high-level security cameras near the servers, reviewing 72 hours of footage around the devastating cyber attack. She grilled everyone, dragging all 8 senior engineers into tense private meetings, grilling them on the patch structure, desperate to find the genius behind that brilliant code. Not a single expert knew. She compared the attachment comment logs against every executive badge swiped inside the tech firm. Total dead end. Meanwhile, prestigious Connor had grown remarkably quiet, faltering for just a split second during executive status meetings. He even abandoned his daily routine of dropping by her office to discuss high-level corporate financials. We often ignore the lowest ranks, and it took 4 days before she checked the right camera. A forgotten lens on the 11th floor, angled just enough to catch a tiny slice of the secure server wing. The timestamp read 2:07 in the morning, right during the cyber crisis. The video was grainy, washed out, and completely gray. Exactly the kind of blurry mess a corporate lawyer would dismiss as completely useless. But there he was, a phantom in a humble maintenance uniform, quietly rolling a cart past the servers. He stopped dead in his tracks, a heavy, lingering pause of about 4 seconds. Then the invisible worker kept walking, vanishing down the empty hallway. Boss Katherine sat there, staring at the frozen screen for ages. No face, no name tag, just someone dismissed as an invisible worker. She had no proof, only a heavy, sinking realization that the lowest-paid person might have saved them all. 9 years back, Seattle was a different world for a brilliant man named Hunter Blake. He was just 20 when he confidently walked right into the lobby of a small systems architecture firm in Capitol Hill, armed with only a laptop and a custom cybersecurity portfolio so brilliant it made the top executives sit up in absolute awe. Before turning 23, he was running their entire network security division. By 25, he mapped out the foundational routing logic, the core architecture that built the massive Athetheron Dynamics tech empire. His network design was so unique, his amazed colleagues dubbed it the Cathedral, because it was a coding masterpiece engineered brilliantly from the inside out. Every single piece supported another. Nothing was wasted. Think back to when your position matched your passion. Hunter was truly happy because he had discovered that rare intersection where his raw engineering talent met what the world desperately needed. By then, he was married to Diane, an equally brilliant engineer he met at a systems seminar. She tolerated his terrible jokes, keeping a running tally of the rare ones that made her laugh. A list he admitted was tragically, hilariously short. Their daughter Hannah arrived when Hunter was only 22. Tiny, with wide brown eyes and a profound calm that the hospital nurses gossiped about. For 2 golden years, his high-status life felt masterfully built by design, not just luck. Then, on a bitter February afternoon, Diane died in a terrible wreck on Interstate 90. A heavy truck simply fishtailed across the black ice. Hunter was stuck in an important boardroom, completely oblivious until his phone rang 3 times. He stepped out and finally took the call. The hollow, devastating months that followed that tragic day. A suffocating, heavy wave of grief he could never explain to his high-ranking peers. He took baby Hannah from the hospital, brought her home, and laid her down in the middle of his empty bed. No corporate title could fix this. His entire universe had permanently shifted. They saw him as just another worker, but he stayed to finish his final masterpiece. What his honest mind didn't foresee. A ruthless betrayal he only uncovered later. through a quiet tip from an old colleague. While he was away mourning his late wife, the corporate elites made their move. Those powerful, high-ranking partners quietly stripped away his foundational intellectual property, feeding his pure genius into what became the foundation of Ethereum. His credit, wealth, and prestigious title were handed to undeserving suits instead. The real creator's name was completely erased from the official records. When he objected, a powerful partner named Grant Marshall stepped in, calmly claiming his priceless work was just a pre-compensation phase, completely cutting this brilliant mind out of their massive fortunes. Another high-flying executive who happily signed off on this theft was Connor Reeves. This betrayed genius weighed a massive lawsuit for 6 solid months. Then stopped not from lack of proof, but because courts would devour his years. He chose his daughter, proving that being a good father matters more than any wealthy title. Most days he never regretted choosing family over corporate wealth. But you and I know how position hurts. Those school mornings always stung. The wealthy parents waiting in that pickup line drove expensive luxury cars, wearing casual designer clothes that cost thousands just to look simple. While Hunter arrived in his old sedan, still wearing his overnight uniform, feeling the cold, silent judgment from those wealthy parents. When shallow society judges a brilliant mind wearing a patch that reads maintenance. Hannah saw it too. She had that sharp accuracy kids develop when they are truly loved. They think poor means stupid. She said it calmly, with no bitterness, just stating a sad, observable truth. He stared at the road, completely silent. There was simply no answer he could give that was both honest and comfortable. And he had promised himself, years ago, that he would never raise his daughter on comfortable lies. Now let's look at Katherine Whitmore, an executive who saw past superficial titles. She searched for this hidden genius systematically, looking beyond his low profile. She sent the code to 3 top security consultants across 3 cities, asking one simple question. Who could have written this? The first, a veteran system architect in Denver with 20 years of government experience, got back to her in 48 hours. He said the creator either built the entire system or wrote its master blueprint. This structure isn't reverse engineered, it's native. This brilliant mind has lived inside this code base. The second expert, a top analyst based in Austin, confirmed the code held a rare technique he had seen referenced only once, in an old academic paper written a decade ago at a small Seattle firm. The third, a woman running a boutique AI security firm in Seattle, tracked down that document and gave Katherine the forgotten name of the true author. The chief executive officer did not recognize the name, but she wrote it down. Soon our worlds collide. 3 weeks later, she flew to Seattle visiting his old firm and spoke with 2 former workers who actually remembered his brilliance. Let's start here. One expert called him the most naturally gifted engineer they'd seen in 30 years, regardless of his job title. Another quiet voice noted he walked away when corporate politics became too toxic, adding that they had absolutely no idea where to find him today. The CEO searched the University of Washington records, desperately hunting for traces of his brief time in graduate school. She even flew to Denver for a meeting, trying to track down an old colleague from a brief federal contract. In Austin, she found a woman who shared his desk for 3 short months at a tech startup that went bankrupt. In every city, the exact same puzzling picture slowly began to emerge. A man of truly exceptional brilliance. A deep technical genius who completely vanished from the corporate rat race. A ghost whose location remained completely hidden from every elite source. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Hunter Blake approached the Athetheron service doors at 10:45 every night. He clocked in, grabbed his basic cleaning cart, and got to work. He scrubbed toilets, wiped down elevators, and silently mopped the massive hallway right outside the high-tech engineering department. Always invisible, always incredibly thorough. Yet he stood as the top-rated overnight janitor across his division for 18 straight months. Katherine walked right past this brilliant mind 11 times over 3 short months. She only realized that shocking fact much later when she reviewed the security tape. You and I know how this goes. To her, a uniform meant he was just a blurry shape in the background. An overlooked uniform she dodged, utilizing his invisible labor daily without a single second thought. It was never done with malice. She simply never bothered to look closer. One evening, his daughter Hannah watched a business report on the tiny television inside their cramped kitchen. The screen flashed to the high-profile CEO leaving a major tech conference in San Francisco. The headline read, "Etherian CEO continues search for anonymous system savior." Hannah stared, then glanced down the narrow hall where her overlooked father was tying his heavy work boots. "Dad," she said, "that lady keeps looking for you." Hunter looked up, keeping his weary expression completely blank. "Go to sleep on time tonight," he said, quietly pulling on his worn jacket. The frantic search Katherine ran from her high-floor executive office created a dangerous, unseen ripple effect downstairs. A threat her high-ranking position made her entirely blind to. It made corporate rival Connor Reeves sweat in ways that normal boardroom pressure never ever could. You see, Connor analyzed office hierarchy exactly the way a hungry wolf studies an open field, always marking escape routes, tracking exactly which executives were actually paying close attention. He built a ruthless tech career by manipulating corporate perceptions long before others even realized it. And he had been blinding Katherine to the reality since her first day as boss. But that anonymous patch from the night of the cyber attack seriously cracked his perfect wall of deception. The server comment log. Hidden deep inside the data security patch, his personal copy of the IT incident report was missing crucial details. But it was still enough. This overlooked genius had breached restricted network files that Connor secretly funneled through a shadow admin account. An account masked behind a fake software vendor that died years ago. Some ghost with root access. Let's face it, someone knowing Etherian's original system strolled through his traps like they built the maze. So Connor launched his own quiet hunt. Let us look at how easily real brilliance is dismissed. He ordered security to screen the night shift, masking this massive security investigation as just a basic audit. He pulled access logs for every low-wage worker in the building during the hack. He brought in a trusted outside firm to run discreet checks on the support staff. Their only task was digging into the backgrounds of the lowest-paid employees, even the invisible night contractors. He kept his cool, but one thought terrified him. Somewhere nearby, an absolute genius was hiding behind a low-level title. An overlooked mind understood this system better than any executive ever could. But Hunter already knew someone was searching for him. The clues were subtle, easily missed by executives blinded by their own self-importance. Just barely off. Strange activity on the terminal he secretly used to fix their broken server code. A security guard suddenly asking him a few too many questions. Down in the server room, they changed his cleaning routes to push him into new areas, trying to disrupt his quiet night routine. He adapted easily, hiding his real brilliance behind a simple broom. Think about this. One night, he is totally alone on the 18th floor. He spotted a critical cooling system failing due to terrible programming. A system error that would have crashed their entire network within 48 hours. He sat down at a maintenance computer right next to the server racks and opened a diagnostic screen. He spent 14 minutes rewriting the network load with absolute mastery. His programming was so flawless that the clueless leadership would assume their servers just worked perfectly. Then he stood up, closed the terminal, and went back to his mop. Later, in his tiny apartment, Hunter sat down and stared at the cheap plastic badge in his hands. The exact same lanyard he had to wear to work every night. An ID with his name, number, and the word maintenance stamped over the face of a genius. He turned the plastic card over, remembering the groundbreaking software architecture he had designed years ago. The beautiful code that actually made this entire corporation possible. A 40-page tech blueprint he created in a tiny Seattle coffee shop years ago, using borrowed computers. At 22 years old, he invented a routing system that the entire arrogant tech industry had completely missed. Back then, he felt real pride, a sense of worth that this corporate world had completely buried. He put the badge aside and walked over to check on his sleeping daughter. The next morning, the CEO scanned his masterful code through a classified security database. The database found a match. The brilliant mind behind that system belonged to Hunter Blake. By Thursday, she finally had his name. That very afternoon, she searched her executive directory, finding absolutely no trace of him among her highly paid office elites. Finally, she looked past the titles, searched the lowest vendor contracts, and found him. An overnight janitor, sweeping the floors of her multi-billion-dollar tech empire. She sat frozen at her desk in utter shock, then slowly stood up. She walked out of her luxury office, taking the elevator down to the 11th floor. See the beautiful irony, she spent months chasing a ghost, while the true genius simply punched a time card. She finally tracked him down in the east hallway, pushing a heavy janitor cart toward the supply closet as his shift ended. You and I have probably done the exact same thing. We pass by people in uniforms every day, completely failing to really see them. Now she stood 12 feet back, carefully watching the quiet genius she had dismissed as just a custodian since spring. The calm, grounded steadiness of his stance. The deep focus he brought to something as simple as putting a mop back into a storage closet. The way he walked the corporate floors, listening to the building's digital pulse instead of just cleaning the tiles. "Excuse me," she called out. He paused, turning around slowly. "Ma'am," he replied. "Your name is Hunter Blake." It was a statement, not a question. He stared back with a completely blank face, but his eyes were incredibly sharp. It was the gaze of someone who had already calculated several possible outcomes for the next 30 seconds, waiting to see which reality would unfold. "Yes," he answered flatly, "I need to talk." "I am on shift until 6, he simply turned back to his closet. Over the next week, the CEO kept finding subtle excuses to visit whichever floor Hunter was cleaning. She never forced a conversation or blocked his path, knowing from their very first meeting that any kind of pushiness would instantly slam the door she desperately needed to keep open. Instead, she just lingered nearby, asking casual questions and hanging on to every single word he said. She noticed the tiny details. He never once passed a network terminal, without his sharp eyes proving he had instantly decoded every single piece of data on it. He knew the moment the ventilation system sputtered out of rhythm on floor 14, without even checking. He greeted the night guard by name, remembering tiny details about his family. His hidden brilliance finally clashed with corporate arrogance on a random Tuesday evening. A loud, self-important executive named Marcus was rushing blindly. He stormed around a sharp corner, crashing directly into Hunter's cleaning cart. Soapy water splashed 10 feet across the floor, and Marcus ruined his expensive shirt with hot coffee. Marcus furiously blamed the quiet janitor. His voice had that whiny tone of a privileged man who was completely embarrassed, choosing to mask his mistake by attacking someone he deemed beneath him. "What the hell? Watch where you leave your trash. Clean it up." Hunter stood completely still. He just cleaned the mess quickly, in total silence, and then, without even making it look like a change in task, he casually leaned over a maintenance terminal, typing a complex line of code so fast it blurred. He fixed a major glitch in the company's backup server that would have triggered a total security lockdown within an hour. He closed the screen and simply walked away. The CEO watched from down the hall, witnessing every second of his silent brilliance. She stood frozen long after this dismissed genius had disappeared around the corner. The crushing realization of his true, unseen value finally hit her all at once. It took the CEO 4 whole days to uncover the truth she usually found in minutes. Because someone had deliberately erased his entire digital footprint. The early files for the startup's core systems were originally registered under the names of 2 official partners who had stolen his brilliant work. This humble janitor was completely erased from the history and patents of his own company. The corporate world treated him like a nobody. But you and I know, she was finally looking past his job title. Katherine dug deep, pulling the oldest backup archives from the company's original vault. Legal documents and raw engineering commit logs that her IT security team recovered during the post-attack forensic audit. Logs dating 18 months before the official founding. The code history left no room for doubt. The core architecture that the entire company relied on had been built by a single brilliant engineer working in total obscurity. Every single timestamp matched the development key from an old academic research record she had unearthed. Every core patent and licensed technology that built the firm, making them $4 billion a year, belonged to one completely overlooked genius. Then, right around the tragic days when Diane Blake passed away, this quiet genius simply vanished from the logs. The next entry carried a stolen note under a new name, refactored from base draft. But that rewrite was purely cosmetic. The brilliant underlying code remained untouched. Katherine sat with this devastating truth all night, keeping it strictly to herself, grappling with what it meant, far beyond the legal or financial implications. You and I know that feeling, when a harsh truth forces you to rethink everything you believed. She had been so proud of her massive empire. She genuinely believed Ethereum's core technology was her own unique creation, a masterpiece she had personally fostered from the ground up. It was brilliant, but she was just profiting off a ghost's stolen work. Meanwhile, Connor finished his own frantic search, absolutely terrified by the conclusion he reached. The graveyard security team flagged a single name appearing consistently in the badge logs near sensitive terminals during the graveyard shift. That name was Hunter Blake. Connor matched the janitor's name with early founding records, and cold panic gripped his chest. The ultimate dread of being outsmarted by someone you dismissed as a nobody. So, he acted quickly. He immediately called a shady broker he had been negotiating with for months. A rival firm eager to steal Ethereum's routing algorithms for a competitor platform, telling them to finalize the legal transfer paperwork, to get ahead of any internal investigation by the board. That same night, he ordered his corrupt IT contractor to prepare a package. They forged fake access logs, placing the janitor's badge at the main transfer hub during a key window, designing a clever narrative where their invisible overnight janitor was systematically stealing critical proprietary data for outside competitors. We have all seen it, an elegant setup born of absolute desperation, hastily pinned on an easy low-status scapegoat, counting on the foolish belief that nobody ever looks closely at a mere janitor. The next morning, Katherine got an encrypted alert from a contact inside the FBI. It confirmed that the Cheel agency was investigating suspicious internal data transfers at a massive Chicago logistics firm, and it traced the entire breach directly to a high-ranking executive account. Not the janitor, but a panicked Connor did not wait. Let us watch it break. At 8:42, before Katherine could finish her security call, the building's digital infrastructure registered a sudden secondary spike. Look closely at this cyber attack, smaller than October, highly targeted and quiet. It wasn't built to crash the system, just quietly drain routing data to an outside server. But that breach failed, stopped dead by an anonymous patch Hunter Blake, coded alone at midnight months ago. But the hacker's real job was already done. In the brief 30 seconds before they were shut down, the virus planted a completely fake access record into the corporate logs, complete with a badge scan, Hunter Blake's scan. By 9:15, 2 security guards had already tracked Hunter down, up on the 6th floor, marching him to the freight elevator with that tense, stony efficiency guards use when ordered to handle a major security threat. Corporate gossip spread exactly how you and I would expect, carried on that tense silence of people pretending not to watch. Office workers pretended to type while watching the security escort. Someone down in finance fired off a quick group text. 8 minutes flat. That is all it took for everyone to blame the invisible night janitor for a massive breach. Only a few stayed quiet. An operations manager whispered loudly enough for her nearby deskmates to hear. I mean, he always wandered where he did not belong. Some guy near the elevators loudly claimed he was not shocked at all, even though he had not spoken 2 words to Hunter in 18 months of sharing the same office. These shallow judgments were easily delivered, in that exact tone people use when they fail to recognize true genius. You and I have seen it. Doubling down instead of admitting they were completely wrong. Hunter was shoved into a ground-floor interrogation room and told to wait. Hands flat on the table, his expression totally unreadable, just like he always looked. He was not scared or broken down, just completely still. He knew exactly what that framed log proved and what Connor had done. He knew the digital trail the executives were reviewing over the next few hours was cleverly designed to bury him. A simple janitor's word would never be enough to fight it. No powerful friends to defend his stolen genius, no fancy title to shield him from the corporate machine. He was only the help. Katherine stepped into the conference room right at 9:38. The security chief told her, pretending to be neutral, that the case against Hunter was rock solid. A furious board member also called her in the stairwell, demanding a harsh and formal charge against a lowly contractor would fix their PR nightmare and show leadership accountability, telling her she should simply play along. Katherine opened the heavy door and studied him. She felt that crushing corporate pressure. The entire system blamed this forgotten single dad, but she sensed they were deeply wrong. Hunter silently stared back at her. His features softened slightly. He asked for no pity, offered no excuses, merely acknowledging the CEO was there. "I understand what this looks like," he said. "I know what it looks like," she replied. "I do not need you defending the optics. I just need the truth." Hunter stayed totally silent. "The truth," he said softly, "will cost you a lot more than appearances." Katherine left that room, ordering security to freeze the situation without escalating, and hurried upstairs. She had barely 4 hours before the board's emergency meeting would begin. She knew Connor would hide behind expensive, fancy corporate lawyers. She knew those fake security logs were designed to mimic a slow and methodical digital theft that could easily have been pulled off by someone with night access to the main servers. It framed the quiet janitor, exploiting his low-level shift schedule. But she recognized his hidden genius, refusing to judge him by his uniform. She felt absolute certainty that this setup was wrong. A man who silently kept Ethereum's networks running from the shadows for 18 months. Who wrote a midnight patch to save a corporation that buried his brilliant mind. This overlooked master was not stealing data. But she could not prove his innocence fast enough for this corporate panic. She had to uncover the hard evidence directly from the system. She started by searching through the offline server backup archives. Ethereum kept a cold backup of its administrative infrastructure on an air-gapped system, a fail-safe protocol that Hunter, the overlooked genius, had quietly designed inside the original system architecture blueprints, hidden away inside a brief paragraph on safety redundancy. These cold backups were kept deep down in a physical server room in the basement. "Let us follow her down." Katherine used a clean hardware key to open the heavy door. The files dated back to the company's very first year of operation. It stored everything, all transactions, and every single administrator account action. Every data transfer record, including the metadata linked to Connor's secret vendor account. The offline servers logged this data, untouched by the desperate cleanup Connor attempted on the live network. Katherine spent 2 exhausting hours pulling the files. Sitting directly on the freezing concrete of the server room floor, her laptop glowing, wearing only her light jacket in the 55-degree room for machinery safety, refusing to stop even for a moment to get a warmer coat from upstairs. "Stick with me here," because the evidence she uncovered was glaringly obvious. For 14 months, the executive used that secret account to quietly steal valuable algorithm files, important routing system files, and critical load balancing parameters. And even the unique machine learning software layer that served as the absolute crown jewel of the company's platform. He copied these files in small batches, keeping them safely beneath the detection limits of automated security. The destination was a Grith, remote server farm owned by a shell company that Katherine had seen listed before in a rival business's secret filings. She copied the files, walked out, and took the elevator to the 32nd floor boardroom. The board meeting was already underway. Connor sat smugly with his expensive lawyers, talking confidently until she cut them off mid-sentence. Katherine threw the doors open and marched directly to the head of the table. She connected her drive to the main screen, displaying the undeniable theft records for all to see. She did not shout. True merit never needs cheap theater. She quietly showed the board 14 months of systematic data theft, the fraudulent vendor account setup, and the hidden network of target servers, and the FBI case file number she secured that morning. Connor kept up his executive front for 90 seconds. Then his lawyer leaned in close, whispering a quiet warning, and suddenly his world cracked. The high-ranking fraud looked like a man whose long con was finally up. He built his reputation on lies, only to watch his status vanish instantly. 2 federal agents had been waiting quietly down in the lobby. Katherine arranged it at 7 that morning. Now the chair summoned those agents straight into the boardroom. The disgraced boss did not fight back. They marched him off the 32nd floor, ending his 10-year reign of stolen glory. He got rich burying a humbler man's brilliance. Once he left, the boardroom fell dead silent. Katherine studied the powerful executives at the table, then the door. "You and I know how easily corporate status buries true genius," she said, repeating what became her mantra. "The whole country was hunting for a brilliant tech genius," she said, "and he was quietly mopping our floors." This shocking story hit 3 major national news outlets by early morning. Within 6 hours, the story of this invisible technical hero took on a life of its own. It struck a deep chord with people, completely hijacking the normal daily news cycle. The most popular headline was incredibly simple. "The janitor who saved a billion-dollar company," printed right above a photo. A grainy security camera shot taken the previous fall. A tall man in a gray maintenance uniform pushing his cart down a dark hallway. The corridor was empty and dark, lit only by low emergency floor lights. That blurry, low-quality image honestly looked more like a lonely painting than a photo. And somehow that made the mystery go viral even faster. Still, the board moved quickly to protect their precious billion-dollar reputation. Just 48 hours after the CEO was arrested, they ordered a full independent review of the company's original code. That review fully confirmed what the hidden server logs already proved. Within one single week, they officially recognized the quiet janitor, Hunter Blake, as their true creator and offered retroactive pay. Equity that amounted to a 9-figure fortune based on the company's current market value. They even offered him the fancy title of Chief Technology Officer, effective immediately with a massive salary. Prestigious title and major public recognition. Let's picture this. The board chair delivered the offer in person, with Katherine watching while Hunter wore his everyday clothes. Just dark jeans, a basic gray shirt, and work boots. He listened quietly to everything. He asked 2 incredibly sharp technical questions. The chair swallowed hard, realizing this overlooked genius did not need any of their corporate titles or validation. Then, the brilliant janitor calmly said he would think about it. He sat on their big offer for 3 days. His daughter Hannah saw enough news to understand. Over dinner, she simply asked if her dad would take that fancy executive job. Hunter said he really wasn't sure, making Hannah drop her fork. "You should only take it if it makes you feel like you," she told him. She was only 7 years old, but Hunter stared at her for a long time. "What would you do?" Hunter walked away from that executive title and the spotlight completely. He quietly accepted on his own terms. This overlooked man secured his future with a quiet, lasting settlement. It protected him and Hannah, keeping them far from the toxic corporate spotlight that once ruined his life. He simply requested that part of his payout fund a program for overlooked kids in Chicago schools. He never chased a single headline for it. Katherine only learned the truth when a grateful director called the company 3 months later. Meanwhile, Katherine spent the 6 months after Connor was arrested working just as hard as her first day as CEO. But now she finally understood the true value of unseen talent. She completely overhauled the broken systems that allowed a massive cybersecurity rescue to go ignored for years. She established a strict rule that she stubbornly named the Blake Standard in all internal company documents, demanding every line of code on Ethereum's platform be tracked and credited, and paid for instantly, whether you were a lead developer or a janitor. She rewrote the GRIST service contracts, bringing the entire night cleaning crew into the exact same professional growth and bonus structures as the actual tech staff. She kept it quiet, avoiding flashy press tours or media glory. A few months later, picture this with me. The building goes quiet as the 32nd floor empties out. Katherine headed for the elevators, turned a corner and spotted Hunter down the East Hall. He still had his cleaning cart. She froze. "You know you don't have to do this," she said. He paused. A small, genuine smile crept onto his face and lingered. "Maybe," he replied, "but I like fixing things people overlook." Katherine stood there in the quiet corridor, completely speechless for a moment. Suddenly, small shoes echoed from the lobby as Hannah came sprinting down the hall, fresh from her school program. She spotted Katherine, slowed down, then casually walked up and grabbed the CEO's hand, exactly how a kid holds onto someone they know they can actually trust. Hunter watched his daughter hold hands with the executive who once treated him like invisible furniture. For once, standing in the hallway he had scrubbed endlessly, He did not lower his eyes. He did not shrink away from the beautiful reality unfolding right in front of him. We live in a society obsessed with chasing shiny, famous innovators. A culture blinded by big stages and flashing spotlights, and egos that only feel valuable when the entire world is watching. Yet the genius who saved the company stood there on a quiet Thursday inside the empire he kept alive, watching his young child find a friend in the quiet life he built. Some people chase the stage and soak up the loud applause. But the overlooked workers are why that stage never collapses entirely. You and I know titles do not define talent. The best minds never beg for credit. The invisible workers fixing servers at 2 a.m., the janitors cleaning up after arrogant leaders. Those who write the quiet code that saves startups from total ruin. These are the unseen pillars our entire world actually relies on, whether society ever recognizes their true worth or not.